Welcome back to the Holy Hangout podcast. Today we have a very special guest named Claire. Claire's going to talk a little bit today on how to make friends, how to be a good friend, and also some sticky situations like how to leave a conversation if you no longer want to be in it, and how introverts actually have a secret superpower. Stay tuned, you're not going to want to miss it. Claire, thank you for being on.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. We met at a outdoor gun range birthday party.
The best way to meet.
Yeah. I feel like that's such a cool story.
It's such a good story.
Absolutely. Something that I noticed as soon as I met you was your friendliness, your outgoing, and you made me feel instantly included. And I think that that's something that I don't normally feel with like a lot of people. And so I was instantly attracted to your character and like saw Christ through you so deeply. And I was like, oh my gosh, I want to talk to you. So
Thank you.
Absolutely. And the reason why I wanted to talk to you is I feel like friendships is such a sticking point for a lot of people and being social, how to do it. And I felt like you're the perfect person to ask. You are by far the most social person I've ever met. You ask amazing questions and you are very warm. So I feel like there's a lot of wisdom we can pull from this. And I first wanted to start by asking you, have you always been social?
Thank you for asking. Maybe not to this degree. I think that for a long time, I was the person who would like scroll on Instagram and be like, I wish I had that. Or like maybe, the equivalent would be like hearing about events and almost like wishing I had the courage to go to more things. I feel like I've always been pretty open and friendly, but like I haven't always maybe had basically the courage to go try a lot of things. And so I feel like I've really grown in that. I don't know if you want me to share more.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. So, I'll just kind of kick us off. So I think one thing to share about me is I have a little bit of like a cautiousness in my personality, but then it's like I can swing to the other side of the pendulum and be like, YOLO, like, let's just try it. And I feel like God has grown me a lot in that. And for me, it's been a good thing because I kind of like I was sharing, I think a lot of times people like they're scared, and they maybe sit at home and they're like, man, I wish I had friends, or I wish like I had the courage to like go meet people or try something new that I'm interested in. And we just don't want to get out of our comfort zone. I mean, who likes that? No one. But all that to say, part of my story is I was really like praying and believing for a new job. And this is back in like, I don't know, 2018, 2019. And it was so funny because I remember I had a friend at church. I was like, I'm going to get so serious about job searching. You're my accountability buddy. And that was like January 2020. And we all know what happened in March 2020. Mm-hmm. And so, for the next year, I was still job searching, still trusting God. But I had my job. It was remote. And so I just got to a point of like feeling stagnant and feeling like, hey, God, like I don't know what to do. So I'm just going to try something. And so I moved to Austin for 4 months. At the time, it was exactly what I needed. It was a huge refresh. It was very encouraging to me because I did 2 different subleases. And I was only there for 4 months. But it really gave me a lot of courage and boldness to put myself out there. And I feel like God really grew me in that season. It was very transformative, even though it was only a couple months. But what I learned in that time was like, am I going to sit at home and be scared and be, depressed and sad because I'm alone? Or am I going to go try something new? And so I feel like that was kind of the push I needed because like, I don't want to assume about everyone listening, but I know for me, when I go do something, I always want like a buddy, I always want like the safety and it doesn't hurt to have that. Absolutely. But I really feel like you should have the courage to try things on your own. And then maybe you invite a buddy the next time, maybe they can't make it. And so I feel like God in that season really taught me like, what do you have to lose? Like be bold, ask, try, attend, and just see what happens. And like in that 4 months, it's not like I gained a million best friends. I think I had first of all, 4 months is a really short time. But I was able to attend a lot of things. I was able to meet a lot of great people. I felt like I was forming relationships. But then I got open a door and I got a job here in Dallas. And so it was very much like a God moment. But I'm sharing that because I think that in that time I learned a lot about like we as people were so inclined to our comfort zones, to the people we know, to the groups that we're, aware of. And really like, that's just the beginning, And I think that we have an opportunity to grow ourselves by, of course, trying new things, but maybe your opportunity is to invite someone into your circle. Maybe you already have a circle, and you're just, kind of wanting some new connections and friendships. And maybe you meet someone who needs that. And so, you're the open door for them. And I think it can work both ways. But all that to say that I think sometimes people get scared because they don't want to put themselves out there, because who does? But then once you go do it, you're like, you know what, that wasn't so bad. And I think the other thing I learned, this is kind of like, I don't know if it's silly, but it feels obvious. I'll say that, but you don't realize it until you like really like implement it. But I think consistency is key, like showing up in the same places at the same times. That's how you're going to meet friends doing, whatever your activity is, right? It could be church, it could be rock climbing, it could be the gym, it could be work, it could be your coffee shop that you go to on Saturdays and journal and read your Bible or whatever, catch up on work. I don't know. But just sharing some of those principles, I think I learned. Honestly, the consistency thing has been more lately, but sorry, rounding back to the story from Austin, just that like, I really felt like God taught me to have a lot of boldness to ask and be like, hey, is there anything going on tonight? Like, can I attend? And I think sometimes we're so scared. We're like, well, like they should invite me and they should think of me. And, I had this friend group and they forgot to call me. Well, they probably forgot to call like half of your other friends too. So I just think it's all about like learning to have a lot of grace for people, and learning to, be a little bold. And I think, I feel like I'm rambling, so I can stop at any point, but I'll stop here.
This is great. Yeah.
Okay. So I feel like, especially, I'll say this. So when you get to a new area, a lot of times that's when you have more courage and you're like, hey, I've got to meet people. I've got to make friends. I'm forcing myself to go to this event or that thing. And at a certain point, you're like, you know what? I've been here a while and I would like to have a consistent set of people. And I think that can happen. And often maybe you have like a little core set of friends. And of course we all want and need that. But one set of friends can't meet all your needs. And I think that when I kind of accepted that, it helped me a lot. So like, for instance, I have friends who are my best friends and we tell each other everything and I can open up to them. I feel so connected, but maybe we're involved in totally different realms. They go to different churches. That we don't work together. We almost like have no way to cross paths unless we plan it. And I really value those relationships and I care about them. I prioritize them. But they might not be the friends who I would socialize all the time with, right? Because some of those friends tend to like smaller environments. They like more one-on-one time. And I like both. I like the intimacy of a deep connection, and I like to be a social butterfly and attend, mixers and networking and game nights and, parties, church things. And so I think that when I realized that not everyone can do everything with you, it helped me be a little more open to like, okay, I'm okay with having like a smaller set of closer friends and then going to do other things with like people I'm friendly with. They don't have to be my best friends. So, okay, that was way more than you wanted to know.
No, that was perfect. I love that. I feel like the key theme too was that you're talking about is like getting outside of your comfort zone.
Yes.
And that's probably what's stopping a lot of people, because I know that was exactly what stopped me from meeting more people. Is one, I was afraid of like, what are these people going to think of me? And then two, like you said, you're always waiting for somebody to go with you.
Yeah.
And that is not the way like now experience it on the other side. It's really not too bad to go by yourself. But before you understood that, like when fear was kind of that driving emotion, was there something you did or a thought process you had that helped you to get over that? Or was it just do it?
Oh yeah. Thanks for asking. I think that the way I would sum it up was I had to realize, like, ask myself, what do I have to lose? Nothing, right? Like either I continue in my same patterns and stay, lonely or wanting to be part of these events or groups, kind of staying stagnant, or I try it, and I think that, like I said, probably when I moved here, and maybe sometimes it still pops up, I swung to the other side of the pendulum, like, I don't care, like reject me, like I'm just going to ask and try and ask if I can come to your party. And if you tell me no, it's okay,
Right.
And some of that might've been like a little too much, but I think the point is like, go ahead and just tell your, like, truly, like if it helps you, like make a list, like pros and cons. Like if I stay doing the same thing I'm doing, what do I have to gain? But if I try something new, it doesn't have to be that you walk up to a stranger and ask if they want to hang out that weekend. It doesn't have to be crazy.
Yeah.
But maybe you're you're kind of friendly with a group and you know that they have a monthly game night. You've heard about it and no one's asked you, but maybe you have the courage and you ask. You say, hey, like, I heard you guys have this event. It sounds like a blast. Could I join next time? Right? Like, it's scary because you're opening yourself up to rejection.
Yep.
But all they can do is say, actually, I'm so sorry. Like, it's more of a closed event. I can't invite you. Or you know what? Like, ask the organizer. Like, it's at this girl's house or this person's event. Ask them. But yeah, it almost like I just had to get over that fear of rejection. And I think that looks different for a lot of different people, for everyone. But I think really just what it comes down to is saying, hey, like, let me just make a move toward this, even if it's like a tiny step. I think there's a quote that says like, even the tiniest step forward in the right direction is movement forward. It's something like that. You can probably go find it and like say it better than me. But basically, like, how are you slowly moving toward getting better in that area? Because it is scary and no one likes rejection.
Totally.
But I think really just asking yourself, like, what do I have to lose? Usually very little. A lot of times it's more about, oh, what are people going to think about me? Am I going to seem desperate? And it's like, so what if people think that, because the 3 times you asked, maybe 2 of the times you got rejected, but the 3rd time, now you found a new group. Now you found a new game night. So I'll just share, in my extreme phase, I was invited by a friend of a friend to it was just a fall party hangout at her house. And this was like, gosh, I had been in Dallas probably like 4 or 5 months at that point. And I heard this group of girls at the party talking about their Christmas party and it sounded fun. And I just kind of said, hey, I heard you guys talking about this party. Can I come? I just asked. And they were like, they were the right people to ask. And they were like, of course you can come. And it was just the most welcoming event and a group of people. And that became one of my core groups here in Dallas. And they had like, maybe like every other month, they had events and game nights and like clothing swaps for women. And I mean, it was just like, wow, what did I walk into? It was wonderful. But it was, and maybe I would have gotten invited eventually. But like, honestly, it was because I said, why not? Like, I'm just going to see what they say. And again, sometimes that backfires and people get weird and they're like, oh no, like, sorry, this is just our friends. But in this case, it was exactly what I needed and God opened a door.
I love that. I heard, this reminds me of 2 quotes. One is, what you don't change, you choose. And so good. I think that's like one of the situations like you're talking about, where if you're in a situation where you want something different, but you're not trying at least to take the next best step to change it, then ultimately you're choosing that.
That's so good.
So I was curious if you have a go-to starter conversation for somebody new that you're meeting. So like typically I'll start with a compliment and then an assumption of somebody. So and it like sparks it. So I'll start with a compliment where it's like, oh my gosh, I love your North Face jacket.
Yeah.
Do you like hiking?
So good.
So it kind of opens up the door. So it's not just like thanks and then ends. And then people are typically never, I've never had an assumption that somebody was offended of. I keep it pretty light.
So good.
But do you have any go-to conversation starters when you're meeting a new group?
Okay. First of all, you're inspiring me. Thank you for sharing that. I love that. People respond so well to compliments. I think that's genius. I think the other key thing is people love to talk about themselves. So always make it about them. I don't know if I have like an excellent formula like you do, but I think it is always, I'm asking thoughtful questions about people. And so, like you said, maybe the opener would be like, hey, that's a really cool headband, or like, hey, like, I think I met you through this person, or this is maybe sad. I don't know if I should use this, but a lot of times I'll see things on people's like Instagram story and I'll follow up and be like, hey, I saw you post this. Like, what about, it's something about them that I can follow up on. So that's kind of what I rely on, just things about them that I've learned or heard. And I am a curious person. So most of the time I really do want to know.
Same.
And yeah, usually they'll share. But I like your idea about like keeping the door open and the conversation going. That's where I don't always like thrive, to be honest. Like I think I can get things started, but anyway, it's always like a hit or miss. So
totally. And I think that's part of it, is like, it's always going to be a hit or miss.
Yeah.
Like I'm sure Joe Rogan, he talks to people all the time. Yeah. I'm sure he probably has moments where he's like, why did I say that? Or,
it's awkward.
Exactly. So we all do. We're all humans.
Totally.
What are some traits that you would say make somebody enjoyable to talk to?
That's a great question. I feel like it's the reciprocity. Like I think I've heard the analogy that a great conversation is like a tennis match or pickleball if you play pickleball. But it's like the ping pong back and forth where I ask you about yourself, you share, and of course I'm genuinely interested. And then maybe you ask me something about myself, or something like I said. It doesn't have to be directly about me per se, but something to kind of get me talking back. To me, that's enjoyable when people are kind of like matching my energy, I think is what people say. And you can tell they're like invested and they're not sort of like looking off in the other direction of like, okay, who's the next best person I can talk to?
Dude, that's huge. If I'm talking to somebody and they're like looking over, I'm like, and I don't enjoy this anymore.
And scene.
Yeah, and scene. Goodbye.
I have been rejected. Goodbye.
Yeah, that's so good though. I like the analogy of pickleball or tennis though, because that is super true. And now looking back, I can totally see that in all the conversations I really clicked with people is I would say something and then either they connect on that or they build from it. And then it's a genuine interest in each other and curiosity. I think leaning into curiosity, it's so interesting to hear that you are a curious person because I am as well. I love asking questions and figuring out stuff about people.
Yes.
And I can imagine that like you said, people enjoy talking about themselves. And I enjoy learning about those situations. So I could see why that would be a trait that makes somebody really enjoyable to talk to.
Totally. And just to add real quick, I think also it's an open door to find out what you have in common. Because at the end of the day, that's what's going to bond your friendship. Right. So like I could tell immediately, like your opening comment to me was something about like a gut health supplement. I'm like, yes. I found my person. Like I found someone I can connect with. It was like, oh my God, wait, what? Nerd. Okay. Let's go down the rabbit hole. Come on.
Let's talk about gut microbiome.
And then like, I don't know. It just kept snowballing. I was like, oh my God, like she knows how to shoot a gun and bake sourdough and she's friendly and open. Wow. What, so it's a great way to kind of keep the conversation going.
Totally. Yeah. I love that. So, okay. We talked about some of the positive things. What are some of the things that we can maybe want to avoid when meeting a new group of people? If it's topics, demeanors, maybe even things you're wearing, I don't know. Like, what is there anything that you would try to avoid when meeting somebody new?
Totally. Great questions. Okay. A few things come to mind. So I think one thing when you're actively seeking new friends, and I've been guilty of this, trust me, people can read your energy. And I don't mean that as like a new age topic. Like there is like a biblical thing about like, like your frequencies and like how you're coming off and things like that. So totally. I'm sharing that because I have definitely had my fair share of times where I'm like, I met this person and I really like them and I really want to be their friend. But maybe they're not reciprocating it to the level that I am. And that doesn't mean that they're a bad person. That doesn't mean that we won't be friends one day. It just means that at this time, they are not quite as interested as I am. And so in those situations, I really try to be very, very mindful that I am friendly, open, interested, available. But if I'm not being reciprocated back to, that I'm not pushing and I'm not coming off as clingy or desperate. And I don't mean that, I don't want to like label anyone if you, like I said, I've been through my fair share of those moments, but like, I think when we feel like we need friends or we need something, similar in dating, people pick up the energy and they're like, whoa, I don't know if I can give you that, and it's almost like it repels them.
100%.
And so I think it's important to like kind of have an open hand. Like maybe you meet someone and you think they're great. But if for some reason, maybe they think you're great too, but they're not, they already have a best friend. They already have 10 friend groups, like whatever the reason is, right? Maybe they're stressed out with their job, who knows, some family stuff. And so just recognizing like, okay, this person is not really reciprocating in the way I would like. It doesn't mean that I'm going to like chew them out or write them off. I'm just going to kind of let it be and move on, and move on to kind of the next sort of opportunity. And I think I'll just share a recent example of this. So kind of in this vein, I had a friend that I connected with. I was like, oh my gosh, like this is great. I feel like we have so much in common. I can't wait. And I kind of felt like she really just disappeared. And I was like, okay, like what did I do wrong? And I was upset, I really was. And then I reflected and I was like, you know what? Like it probably has nothing to do with me. Come to find out it had nothing to do with me. And so recently we reconnected and she shared that she was like super overwhelmed with life and school and just, things. I was like, I get it. I totally get it. Right. And so, but imagine if I had like a meltdown and been like, I cannot believe, what if I tried to chew her out and say like, you ghosted me, whatever. Like, no, I mean, I think all that to say, giving grace to people is like so key. because I know I need a lot of grace. And I think like you can tell the difference between someone who is like genuinely coming into your life, maybe after like an extended period of not being in it, who is interested in you versus like maybe they want something. I think you can pick up on that real quick. So anyway, that probably diverged a little bit, but you were asking like what to watch out for. And I was just sharing, I think it's really easy to come off as a needing something from people. And really a friendship, it's like, that's why it's called a friendship. It's because you're at an equal level. It's not a take, right? And give. It should be a give, take. And so I think when you look at it that way, it's a little bit easier to enjoy people, to pick people you are going to vibe with, because you're like, okay, like, hey, maybe you like are strong in this area and I really like that about you, but I'm strong in this area and like I have that to give to you, and we kind of like help each other.
I love that. I like that you said to basically give grace and assume the best in people.
Yes, totally.
I had a situation where I accidentally cut somebody off in traffic and I was like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. And then I was thinking, oh my gosh, that's probably everybody else that cuts me off in traffic. Like,
yeah.
I don't, anybody that's been in Dallas understands the traffic here is like,
yes,
it is a different ball game.
Yes.
And people are like cutting you off and speeding around and stuff. And it's so much easier to just assume the best and be like, maybe they're racing because their wife is in the hospital, or maybe they truly didn't see me. Because I know every single time I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. But they don't hear me say that.
Yeah.
They just see the car that cuts them off that I just didn't see them, you know? And so it's the same thing with friendships where everybody has these very complex lives, and I think it's very easy to take things personal.
Totally.
But I love that you're saying, like, don't take things personal. Like, it could be truly they're going through something.
Yeah.
And yeah, so I love that point. Okay, so I had a situation I wanted your advice on.
Oh, yay.
So the last meet and greet we went to.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so we had like a group of like, I don't know, it was like 5 or 6 people, and it split up.
Yeah.
And so you went to another group, and then I was left alone with one person. And I was like talking to this person. No, don't be sorry at all.
Okay, it's good.
It was a learning experience.
Okay.
And I didn't know how to leave the conversation, so I just kept asking questions.
Okay,
interesting. And I just like, because I didn't want to just abruptly end and be like, nice meeting you, and walk away, because there wasn't a lot of people, so I couldn't really like slip away. So anyways, is there a way that you've learned to politely and gracefully end a conversation and move on? Because the way that it ended was not graceful or politely. No. I just didn't know how to end it. I didn't want to be in the conversation anymore. Yeah. It was uncomfortable. It felt forced.
Yeah.
And he just ended up being like, I'm going to go say hi to my friend over there. And I was like, yep, sounds great. Like, so
I love it.
How would you recommend, like, once the conversation's dying, you want to go?
Yeah.
How do you end it?
I love this question. We've all been there. I think that my trick for that is I really try to keep it snappy. And so I'm always interested when I'm asking someone a question, like, you know, even if it's a stranger, even if it's someone maybe I'm not as close with, you know, I want to be engaging. I care about people. But when the things are waning, as you shared with the situation, what I like to do is say, well, hey, you know, like I love learning about whatever update, or like, you know, meeting you, or I think I'm going to go chat with this group, almost like he did. You're welcome to join. And almost it's like a friendly kind of open door of like, hey, I'm going to be moving on. Like you can come with, especially at a networking thing, right? But I'm gonna go now, right? And so you're free to go, or you're free to come, but I'm gonna go. And so that can be a little awkward. I feel like I was at a Christmas party this week and something like that happened where it was so funny because I literally was in a group chatting, and I physically got up to go mingle with the next group. And this person next to me was like, oh wait, like if you wanted to hear an update about my job, I'm happy to tell you. I was like, oh. And it was horrible. I was like, of course I want to hear about your job. Please tell me.
Yeah.
Right. And so we chatted, and I'll be honest, I was a little impatient because I did want to go to the next group. And I saw some people I wanted to catch up with. And so I heard the update, and I tried my trick, and I was like, oh my gosh, like, thanks for sharing. That sounds great. You know, good to hear that things are going well for you, kind of. I'm going to go chat with this group now. I would love would you like to join me? And unfortunately, they took it a little bit personal, and I could tell it deflated him. And I was like, oh no, what did I do? So, nothing's perfect. But I think that's maybe the theme there is like, it's probably always going to be a little awkward, but I think as long as it's done in like a friendly manner, it's okay. And I think we're all like thinking the same things.
Right. Like, how do I get out? I don't know how to leave.
What do I do? So yeah, I just try to suggest like a next action and I've had people do that to me a lot. Like they'll say like, oh, I'm gonna go get go get a sweet tea, or I'm gonna go, talk to this group. And so I've learned to kind of do the same thing, of course, in like the nicest way.
Totally.
Yeah.
Maybe running to the restroom could be a good excuse
Oh,
too. It's
that's
like,
a
I'm
good
gonna go
one.
run to the restroom. I just thought of that. But
yeah,
it's just, that's one of the, I think, fears that I had getting into talking to new people is like, what if I don't like, what if I don't want to keep talking to this person? Like, how do I leave? Because I don't want to hurt their feelings. And I think that's the big thing. So I love that point where you're like including them, like, hey, like, I'm going to go, like, I see my friend Sarah over here. I'm going to go talk to her. You're welcome to join if you want to. And then just kind of like leaving it there. Because I think most of the time people wouldn't necessarily follow anyways. They kind of get the vibe where they're like, but yeah. So remembering we're all human. We're all thinking the same thing. I love that.
And just to your point though, of like letting people know, hey, you're great. Like, love ya in the most, platonic sense, obviously a stranger, whatever. But I don't hate you. Like you can still be part. Come on. Okay. Anyway.
Totally. Yeah. I love that. Have you found a good way to share your faith while talking to strangers?
Great question. Yes. Kind of. It's always a work in progress. So one thing I would really like to share with y'all that was it's been a very powerful testimony since I moved to Dallas. Basically, long story short, this guy was an atheist. He met all our friends. I invited him to church, and he became a Christian. And It was like a miracle. And so within the course of like meeting him to him becoming a Christian, it was probably like a 6-month process. And then from there, he met one of my friends, and they're now married. So like, It was a total God thing. I knew he didn't, was an atheist or agnostic or was kind of exploring. And I wasn't saying, oh, that's fine, I don't care. I was saying, hey, I'm a Christian, you should come to church with me. But I was his unconditional friend while he explored. Yeah. And I think that's very powerful, right? It's like people want to be accepted. They want to belong, and they want to be in a place where they can feel loved. And it just so happened my friend who is now married to my other friend really needed that in his life at that time. And it was just like such a God thing of like, wow, like I literally was just at this networking thing. I was randomly talking to this guy, invited him to a game night. And really the bold part in that story came at the game night where I was just chatting with them. And so maybe this is more of the answer to your question. And as I was chatting with him, I was like, you should come to church with me. And he was like, sometimes people will shut you down. They'll be like, no, I'm okay. But in his case, he was like, yeah, maybe, and he had to kind of think about it, but he came. And honestly, I was shocked. I was like, I get shot down a lot when I invite people to church. Yeah. And so that was kind of the practical step. That was the bridge.
I love that. I think that that's one of the biggest things that I've noticed when sharing my faith or trying to be friends with people who may not have the faith is accepting them where they are now. I heard a phrase where it was love the sinner, hate the sin. And also remembering like we all are sinners. You know what I mean? Yeah. And so like remembering that I am no better than, John down the street that is doing whatever X, Y, and Z. I think certain sins get a little bit more taboo. Yeah. Like say homosexuality. You know what I mean? Like I feel like that's a very taboo one that almost everybody in the church is very openly like, oh no, God doesn't want you to live this way. Yeah. But so is gossiping. Yeah. Right. So it's like
preach.
Yeah. So I think it can be really easy to point the finger. And I love that you included your friend where you were in that moment and how he was in that moment. Yeah. And I think that one of the biggest things is God doesn't ask us to come washed and ready. He does that. Amen. He just wants us. So I love to hear how you just included them in your life. It sounds like that's kind of the way that you introduced your faith to people, is like invite them to the things. Don't be offended if you get rejected, but like being that consistent friend that's like, hey, like I have this church I love. If you want to come. Totally. So I've had experiences like that too, where you're shocked that they came, but then it's so cool to hear that one extension. Yeah. Just, it sounds like changed his life.
Totally. So it came at the exact right time.
Yeah. I love that. Praise God. That's so cool.
It's amazing.
What are some of the unexpected benefits of being more social that you've experienced?
Oh, wow. I think it's actually funny because people have told me things like, oh yeah, like I text you when I want to know if a party is going on. I'm like, dude, I'm not invited to every party,
Dude,
just so you know.
You are amazing though. Like I will never, if I ever need like a party or a gathering or something, like I would go to you.
Okay.
Know all the things that are going on. Like you are constantly inviting, and it's so sweet. It makes me so happy. I'm like, oh my gosh, like something else, you know?
Aw,
So
yay. I'm glad you like it.
it's very sweet. But
Yeah.
I can 100% see why people would reach out to you for the parties. Like I've never in my life had so many opportunities to meet up with people.
Yeah. And I like people. And I think that really like, I don't even know that it's me. Yeah, I'm trying to be social, but I don't know. Yeah, I just like people. I don't want to sit alone at the house. Some people love that. Some people really zen out, and that's great. But like for me, I'm like, nah, I'd rather go hang out with people. So might as well.
100%.
Yeah. So unexpected. I just thought that was like funny, something funny to share. Maybe some benefits are like, I think that sometimes like adjacently I'll get invited to things because I'll meet people through events, and it's like, oh, okay, like it's almost like a slow burn of like connecting with new people. And it's like, you don't have to try as hard because, sometimes you do have to put in the effort. And again, like talking about the energy, it's, you're not desperate, but you do have to kind of like ask and, figure out what's going on. And so, yeah, I think sometimes like you get surprised like that and you're like, this is amazing. Like I just got included and it feels great. And I think going back to your original story, I'm so glad to hear that like you felt included by me because that's so important to me, because I think that it's so easy. I don't even think it's most of the time malicious at all, but people are so set on their comfort and they're just like, oh, well, like, no, I don't want to invite anyone new. Like, this is my group. I'm comfortable. We're good. Like, I don't want to mess up the dynamic. That person annoys me. Or maybe these people, the people who might want to come are fine, but they just, speaking about groups, don't want to really go out of their way. And I'm like, I maybe like to a fault or overextend it sometimes. And I'm like, I will go out of my way for people because I know what it feels like to not be included or valued. And I don't want anyone to feel like that. And I think as Christians, and I'm sorry, I don't think this is answering your question. I'm going on a rabbit trail.
I love it.
Okay. And then I'll go back. But I think as Christians, I'm not saying that it's your duty to like invite every person to every event. I'm not saying that. But I do think that we're called to love the unlovable, to love people who are hard to love. And I think that sometimes it's definitely happens in Christian circles, like probably almost more than anywhere else. And that's why people get their feelings hurt and like church hurt and all this stuff, because it's easy for people to click up and be like, oh, like this is my group, like we're good. But really like we are called to love people, to extend the invite, to be open-hearted. And I think especially when people are unlovable, I really, really notice how people treat those people because I'm like, look, Jesus loved everybody. He loved the annoying people. He loved the people who like don't give back, and yes, like there are limits and I'm not saying you have to hang out with those people constantly, but how you treat them shows a lot about your character. Because it's like, those are the people who can never give anything back to you. And what are you giving them? Because Jesus gave us everything and we'll never be able to give it all back. Right?
Dude, that's so good. Could you imagine if Jesus had like his 12 disciples and he's like, we're closed?
Exactly. We're good.
Yeah. Like that's such a good point. And it reminds me of the verse where it says like, even God himself came to serve and not be served.
Yeah.
How much more should we? The way I wanted to end is there's for sure an introvert that's listening to this right now.
Oh, for sure.
What would you recommend that they do? Like the next best step for them? They're not connected in any groups right now. Like, what would you recommend for them to do to start getting plugged in and finding those friends?
Start a gathering, start a game night, start a book club, start something you're interested in. I have very introverted friends who do that. And I'm like, that is so genius. Because think about it. All us extroverts, we're sharking around and we're like, where's the next party? Where's the next gathering? What are we going to do, guys? And maybe that introvert has a party or, it doesn't have to be like, I don't mean like a rager party, whatever. Sure. I just mean like some kind of event. I totally think they should host that. And then the introvert might be thinking, but I don't have anyone to invite because I don't have any friends yet. Start small, go to church, go to the gym. I don't know, go wherever you go and challenge yourself. Today, this week, over the course of the month, I'm going to meet 5 people. And next month, we're going to have a game night with us 5 people. And then the next month, I'm going to tell my friends to invite people to that game night. And it's going to grow and grow and grow. I think that introverts have this like untapped potential to be like an anchor. And because extroverts, I'm speaking for myself, I don't want to speak for everyone, but I think we have a tendency to be a little bit like a drifter in the wind, like squirrel, this event, this, and it's like, sometimes you can't settle down enough to be like, like I probably should host game nights, but I never settled down enough to like do it. And so I just attend everyone else's thing, which I'm happy to do. You know, it's like, okay, I just show up. This is easy. I think that's good advice for an introvert is like start hosting, and it doesn't even have to be at your house. It could be at a coffee shop, it could be at a church, but like lead something, host something, and start small and make it something you like. Because like we're talking about all this friend stuff, really friends, you connect with your friends over the things that interest you. So don't force yourself. Don't be like, oh my gosh, like I have to try rock climbing and I absolutely hate it. No, don't do it. You know, that's ridiculous. Like, what do you like? What do you truly enjoy? And like share that with people. I think it's good advice for everyone, but I think the introverts could really like capitalize on that as typically more of a steady personality.
I love that. The anchor point, that hit differently. I think that is so true. And looking at it as like a positive thing versus a negative. Because I think a lot of people can get down on themselves. They're like, I'm not extroverted. It's like, dude, maybe that's your superpower is that you're introverted and you can be the anchor for all these people.
Absolutely. Yes.
That's
and
awesome.
we need it because life is busy. And I think like going back to some of my earlier points about like, sometimes you connect with someone and you're like, this is amazing. But it's such hard work to keep up the connection because there's no consistent touch point, right? Like maybe touch point examples are like you go to church together, you see each other at a monthly game night, you see each other at the gym, right? Like something where you're going to consistently see each other. That's why a lot of times people hang out with mutual friends because you're going to somehow run into each other. And so I think, just being, like you said, that anchor, creating those touch points, it's so needed in our generation that's like we're non-committal, we're all over the place, we're on our phones, we're just unpredictable really. And so having those kind of like consistencies I think is key for anyone.
Yeah, dude, I love that. Awesome. Claire, thank you so much. This was awesome.
I loved it.
Yeah.
This was a great conversation.
Do you want plus 5,000 aura points? Well, then share the podcast. Leave us a review. It means more than you know. And until next hang, have a great week of worship.